Just waiting a few moments for people to join. Giving it till about 2:01 here, so just another minute. Those who registered for the event to join, participate in the Zoom call, because at the end of the Zoom call, we have a nice little short QA session where you can ask us questions about upcoming features or how to architect your workflows, general questions about Pipedream. So I'd like to give them a chance to join. But it looks like we'll have to start without them joining. So for those who don't know, I am Pierce with Pipedream, and I'm here to show you the basics of Pipedream, how to get started. I'm going to highlight some really cool features like how to create workflows end-to-end that communicate with real APIs using both code and no code. That's where we really shine, is building advanced, complex workflows and using code when you need it, whereas reaching for pre-built actions for the convenience and for a no-code experience for the highest speed possible. We really get the best of both worlds with Pipedream. Oh, we have one person joining, so here we go. Hi, welcome. Can you hear me? Hello, welcome. So as I was saying, I'm Pierce, and this is a short introduction to Pipedream. For those who have not used Pipedream before, we are a automation platform similar to Zapier, but we're more flexible in that you can use code steps natively, and you can even deploy your own custom components to Pipedream. So you have the best of both worlds. You have code when you need the ultimate flexibility, and then you have pre-built actions for the convenience and the speed to build integrations quickly directly in the cloud with our serverless integration platform. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a short proof of concept that really highlights the awesome major features that we have at Pipedream end to end. So the first things first, you start with a project. This project, we're going to create one workflow in it, but a project can contain many workflows, and it can even synchronize with GitHub. So that way your workflows are serialized, and they even have a Git history for your teammates to see when things were changed and be able to roll back to a known working state. It's really handy for version control. So we're going to make a recipes backupper. For those who like to cook, you probably know that websites will leave a life story before you can even start cooking. I have to scroll for ages before I can even see the recipe. It would be fantastic if we could just extract the ingredients and the instructions as markdown and store them in a place that's easy to read and find later. AKA, I'm going to pick Notion for this demo, but I'll also show you how to use it with Supabase and just store this data in Supabase. So we're making a backer upper. We're going to scrape this particular site. And we're going to start with one page or use Notion as our source. So we'll say Notion database, populate Notion database. Cool. So I have this empty database in Notion called recipes. There's only two properties here, the name of the recipe, a link, and then we'll put the recipe inside of the page properties. That'll be a quick way for us to kind of scrape this and then have a page to look at. It's easier to read than going to the website. So we'll choose Notion here. We made a new workflow, and within a workflow, you can create a trigger. Now we have HTTP triggers. It's the most popular trigger where we just create a temporary or like a unique URL that you can trigger this workflow from. But we also have thousands of pre-built triggers that use APIs like Notion to listen to and to trigger this workflow from. So I'm going to pick a new page in the database because that's what we're going to do. We're going to copy this URL and then paste it into our link property in a new page in this database to trigger this workflow. So I already have a Notion account. It's really simple to connect with OAuth. You just connect to your account, authorize Pipedream, and then you can use it in your workflows. And it even comes with these really nice, handy async. We call them async options. So you're not looking for a database ID by its ID. You can just select the database from a nice dropdown. So we'll say new recipe page. That's what we'll call this particular trigger. And this will deploy the source, aka the trigger for this workflow. Just take a moment. So just to go over the flow again, we're going to copy this URL, which will kick off the workflow once we paste it into this link area in the database. So you can see it's waiting for new changes to our database. So I'm going to trigger it by pasting in this link. And then we can run a try now to refresh this particular source. And you can see right here, it says new event. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is our new page. And we can go through the events in here in the page. And this is all the data. So we have the ID edited by me. Here are the properties. And voila, here's our link. This is what we really want. So we need to go out and get this page HTML, right? So we can use Python, we can use Node, but we can also use this handy HTTP request builder. This is really neat. So you can just click send a GET request, and you have this nice Postman-like interface to just copy and paste in values and perform requests. So you may have noticed I just pasted that in and added these special brackets. This means evaluate JavaScript. So double handlebars means evaluate JavaScript. So it's dynamically grabbing the data that we selected from our trigger, which is this particular path. I copied path. That grabs the path to this data, and then I'm pasting it here in the GET request. So it will use that URL we pasted in Notion to grab the HTML. So this is going to perform a GET request, and this is all of the HTML from that page. We don't want all this. This is too much data. So we'll grab the path, and we're going to extract some data. So I reach for Node for this, and I'm going to use this handy dandy use Node AI. So Pipedream, of course, has AI that generates code in the Pipedream format. So we can ask this AI, please extract the inner HTML content of, we need to find the class name from this path, right? We need to find the class name too. So this chunk of data in this nice kind of brown background is the data that we want to scrape specifically. So let's look at the HTML. It looks like this recipe container is a good class to pick from. WPRM recipe container. So please extract the HTML content of this class called WPRM recipe container from that step. So this should use, it's actually using the wrong format. That's interesting. That's weird. and return it as a step. Of course, AI can be finicky at times. In this case, yeah, there we go. I don't know why it didn't return the define component, but this scaffolding is necessary for this to work. So anyway, the AI just generated some Cheerio code, and Cheerio is an NPM library that can parse HTML, and it's loading the HTML content from our steps.getRequest, and then it's loading the HTML. So let's try it out. Let's use this code. And you may have seen, let's see here, get rid of this for a second. You may have seen that there's this test button down here. And the test button executes only the code or action, this particular action. This lets you test in isolation. It's really, really handy. And in this case, we could see it did return returned all this data. It's hard to read because it's so big, but I recognize some ingredients in there. Cool. Yeah, it even shows the title at the top. So we're getting closer. But we need the markdown. We can't just store this HTML content in our Notion database. It's just not easy to read. So let's convert this into markdown. And I just want to highlight how easy it is to create workflows, or how easy it is to use pre-built actions. I could, once again, reach for Node, reach for Python, find a library that converts HTML to markdown, or I can use a handy pre-built action. This helper functions app contains many of these kind of utility functions. And there's a markdown, HTML to markdown action right in there. So all we need to do is just search for our, what do we call this one? Oh, we should call this something special, like get recipe HTML retest. So that way the export uses this new, better name. It's just easier to read. So get steps.getHTML.return value is our new filtered HTML from that page. And then we can search for it here. Get recipe, or recipe, what do we call it again? I already forget. Recipe HTML. Get recipe HTML. Cool. So we can just click on this, and it's smart enough to populate the dynamic path, or the path to this step result. And we'll click test. And this will allow us to convert that HTML into markdown. So for some reason, the HTML parser is including this extra data, but otherwise that works pretty well. I mean, we could see this is the title, and then we could see that it takes out the author, prep time, it includes all of the ingredients and all of the instructions. Great. So we have the meat and potatoes, so to speak. That's a bad pun. But the meat and potatoes of how to set up a scraper to scrape this content. And now we can spend some time to massage this out. But for a proof of concept, let's go ahead and let's store this back into our Notion database. So we want to store this as a page content. So in Notion, there's a concept of appending blocks. So we can append a block, this as a block to a parent. And the parent block ID, the parent, aka the page, is the page that is from our trigger, because we just added a new page. So you can see in this data, let me scroll down a little bit. See how it says object page? The ID to the page is this parameter. So now we have the block ID, and we want to add markup, aka markdown. And this is the content that we're going to provide to Notion. So it requires an array, as the instructions say, and we're just going to take the results from this HTML to markdown step and then pass it to append block here, like this. I need to remove these extra brackets because we're already evaluating JavaScript. So what it's doing is it's taking an array of this markdown. And then finally, let's click test, which will actually execute the update Notion page endpoint. And we just added 17 blocks. Cool. So if we go back to our Notion recipe here, if we pop out the item, look at that. We have the recipe right here, scraped, and with the instructions and everything. So yeah, we could spend some time automating the removal of this extra data, like undefines and whatnot. If at the end of the video we have extra time, I'll definitely do that. But this just kind of highlights from end to end how easy it is to build the workflow, test with a single event, and then all you need to do is click deploy, and this thing is live. So now this particular workflow is live. It's checking for new entries in our database every 15 minutes, and it will attempt to do the same thing over and over again. So if we pick another one, let's pick another particular, pick this slow cooker whitening. This is kind of fancy too, this noodle soup. So we'll copy this URL. We will add a new entry. So we added a new entry to the database. We click run now, just to make the source run again. And it found the new page, and we'll see if it can, this particular view shows that the workflow is executing, and now it's finished, it's successfully completed, and we can see how long it took, how many credits it used. We can go back to our Notion recipes database here, and voila, you can see it extracted the recipe for this particular recipe, like the details for this particular recipe, right in Notion again. So now it's just kind of a passive listening for new links and then populating them. You can see how this is pretty powerful. You could extract the individual ingredients and make an ingredients database. This is just 10 minutes of development, but you can see how this is extremely powerful and lets you create automations very quickly. So that kind of covers an end-to-end example, combining steps with code or without code to build an end-to-end automation. Now, to go over some of the more like custom things you can do with the workflow, we offer the ability to change your timeout and your memory settings. These control how long the maximum timeout for a workflow is, as well as how much memory you want to allocate to this workflow. So if you have a particularly beefy operation that's doing a lot of data processing with video, audio, et cetera, you can increase the memory. And you can also automatically retry if this workflow is particularly important. So that way, like say Notion's API goes down, this particular option is really helpful because it'll instruct the workflow to retry again. If it does fail, it'll retry up to 6 times, I believe, with exponential backoff. Limit concurrency is really useful for abiding by read-write limits. For example, in Google Sheets, you can only send 60 requests per minute. So you would want to make sure that you limit your execution to 60 executions to 1 minute to make sure you're staying underneath that particular limit. Concurrency is a little bit different in that you can control how many workers that should be spun up at a time. So for workflows that are receiving a lot of events at the same time, Pipedream will automatically spin up new workers to allocate for that demand. So that way your workflows kind of scale with demand. But in some cases, you don't want that. Sometimes you only want one worker at a time. So that way you can control how fast the workflow runs. And you can control how many events are backed up in this queue. So when new pages are added in this example, they're added to a queue, like you saw over here on this left-hand bar. The queue size helps us control how many events we keep in the background until it's their turn to run with a worker. So eliminating cold starts is the next setting. This one's interesting in that you can have your workers be on demand. In serverless technology, the reason why it's so flexible and it can scale is because workers are created on demand with the traffic coming in. The downside of that is that if you don't use workers, they'll go to sleep to save on cost. You can eliminate cold starts, meaning if these cold workers are asked to come up live again, there is a short period of time where they are warming up, and you can eliminate this cold start by enabling this option and choosing how many workers you'd like to keep warm. This will cost credits for every 10 minutes. just to keep these workers running. It requires us to basically have a heartbeat to keep them alive. So they cost compute time because they're on demand, they're available. This I would use for production workflows that require a certain time limit or performance to respond in. For example, Slack. Slack requires you to respond within, I believe, 10 seconds to messages. So if you have a cold start, then Slack will error out on the messages where your workflow is cold. In this case, you can eliminate cold starts, and then that way you have at least one worker to respond to Slack messages within 10 seconds, even though you may not receive events for hours at a time. Last but not least, you can run a VPC. So VPCs are a way to control your outbound IP addresses from workflows. By default, all workflows spin up in anywhere in the AWS US East 1 region, which means that they can have an IP address that's dynamic. With a VPC, you can control that this workflow only uses this IP address to send outbound HTTP requests. This is particularly useful for connecting to sensitive databases that have a strict list of IP addresses that they allow to be communicated to, like a firewall, for instance. So you can allow this particular IP address to contact your sensitive database or your internal API or business application that is protected behind a firewall. So that covers all the advanced workflow options. The other really cool thing about Pipedream is the data stores. So data stores are this tool that allows you to store key value data without having to add another database or pay for another database. You can quickly add them to workflows, and they are extremely fast, and they're just simple for keeping track of data in like a cache. So here we're just tracking a bunch of subreddits, and we're making sure we don't re-emit workflows when we've seen certain comments or seen certain posts. And it's really simple to integrate with them in Pipedream because we have pre-built actions to automatically use them. Event history. So we cover kind of like the building blocks of Pipedream. This is the monitoring and performance side of Pipedream, where you can see in a single pane of glass how your workflows are doing and the health of your workflows. So you can filter by success, like the workflow execution status. So if I want to see all erring workflows, then I can check this out, and I can take a look at a specific error. And here I can see there's an issue with our Puppeteer instance in this particular event. So you can kind of go through and make sure you're handling events correctly. You can also see events by workflow if you want to make sure that specific workflows are being executed. And you can also filter by date. So just a really handy way of seeing events. You can even build from these events. So say you find an error case and you want to see how you could possibly fix it. You could build from this event. It'll open the workflow builder with that specific event. It's pretty neat. So now here I can see this error. I can try to reproduce it, click test. And I think this is an intermittent error, so it probably will just pass. I don't think it's one that's related to the code. I think it's just related to how Puppeteer spins up. But you can do the same thing with your code logic and quickly find where you have bugs or data issues and incoming events to your workflows. So again, yeah, this one passed. So it's not a great example, but it's a way for you to see bugs quickly and build directly from them and build bug fixes directly from them. We have, I think that pretty much, yeah, it covers all of the basic building blocks, event history, settings that I'll cover those in pricing. So for those who are not aware of our pricing points, we have 3 major tiers. We have basic, advanced, and business. I showed everything to you in business today. The VPC feature, the VPC feature is the big thing I showed you today, and from my particular account. But the other ones are the ability to set up a custom webhook domain instead of using the Pipedream.net domain for these webhooks that trigger workflows. As well as SAML, you get a private Slack channel for support directly from us, the staff, and you can require 2FA across your entire account or your entire workspace. So all their team members would be required to use 2FA to log into their Pipedream accounts. The advanced plan is kind of our middle tier. You do not get those features, but you have unlimited workflows, unlimited connected accounts. You have the ability to use the GitHub sync feature, and you can use the eliminate cold starts, auto retries, event history, and the execution controls, as well as that code gen I was showing you within Node.js code steps. The basic tier is what it says. It's only 20 workflows, only 10 connected accounts. You don't have access to the AA features. You don't have access to premium apps or auto retries or execution and concurrency controls. This is for the most basic use case. We definitely recommend the advanced for the highest value. And that about covers it. Any questions I can open up to the floor? Anything I can explain in detail? All righty. Okay. Well, thanks again for joining us. Hope to get you in the next one. If you have any questions, please just reach out to us at Pipedream. Join our Slack community. If you check out pipedream.com/support, you can check out our support options. One of them is join the community. So this Slack community is free to join. We, staff and members alike, help each other get inspiration and build workflows together and automations together and learn code together. The other area I recommend checking out is our university courses. These are really helpful for getting started. If you don't know code or if you're an experienced developer, you can use this to learn Pipedream specific concepts, as well as learn how to use code in Pipedream itself. And you can learn how to build components, which are the pre-built actions and triggers that you saw within the Pipedream workflow builder. So thanks again for watching. Have a great one.